The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 years, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Ben Ark from LNBit.
Hello all, Shamai.
Victoria Jones from Satoshi's Page.
Good evening, everybody.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue 1. The price of Bitcoin seems to be up. The price of Bitcoin is up 2.86% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 104,410, a high of 105,400, and a low of 100,520. That's $1 for 958 Satoshis, just on the other side of the 1,000 Satoshi barrier. Bitcoin hits block height 900,000. That's a big round number. It means nothing. Issue 1, Bitcoin eyes decline below 100,000 amid profit taking and the Trump-Musk clash. Bitcoin's decline has been sustained by long-term holders taking profit, which hit $1.47 billion per day last week, coincidentally just after the Bitcoin conference. Meanwhile, on Twitter, President Trump and Elon Musk are fighting over the one big, beautiful bill, and it might not make it through the Congress. According to this article on FX Street, Bitcoin could crash to $92,500 if it fails to recover the 103 support level, currently at 104. Ben Ark, what do you think about Elon Musk versus Donald Trump, these two billionaires fighting before our eyes in real time? I was too busy to watch it, unfortunately, but my friend Mike called me up breathless. He was like, I can't believe what's happening. They're fighting on Twitter. I think a lot of people, myself included, saw this coming. These two giant egos in one room. But to see it go from last week, he's in the Oval Office. Trump's giving him the key to, I don't know what. They say Trump has designed a key to the White House. It's his own thing. He's gave it to him. But everything was fine. He's going to retire. It's going to be great. And now, like a month or later, they're fighting to the death on Twitter. What do you think, Ben?
I think Elon Musk, he's got to do some blame shifting to kind of rationalize the decline of his companies. And one of the best ways to do that is to villainize Trump. I mean, obviously, I don't like Trump, but from Elon's own perspective, is to villainize him and also just to give some distance between him and Trump. So I think there is a lot of incentives at play. He's clearly desperately trying to save Tesla. When it comes to the Bitcoin price, the interesting thing is that they're both Bitcoiners, so they're fighting out on this world stage, and they both seem to be Bitcoiners. And in fact, more and more people seem to become Bitcoiners on the world stage. And we've just had, over the past month, I would say, a very positive news cycle for Bitcoin, because lots of people are talking about Bitcoin. It's all in a positive way, even if they're critical of the people who are talking about Bitcoin. So if even the coverage of the Bitcoin conference, for example, by kind of lefty news sources, because it was within the mainstream news cycle, they had like experts, their own journalists on, who were talking about the conference, and they're still talking about Bitcoin in a favorable way. They were just saying, and they were making a separation as well between the kind of the Trump and the White House administration as it stands now, and then also Bitcoin and Bitcoin's actual value proposition. And I think historically in Bitcoin, we've always had this thing of an impression lag event. So you have a news cycle where they talk about Bitcoin lots in a fairly positive way, and just not in a negative way that it's for drug dealing or whatever. And then there's like a lag because you have all these impressions which are happening to people by osmosis. And then in a month's time, the retailer sits down, the general no coiner to become a Bitcoiner, sits down and decides to Google Bitcoin and then learn about it, and they end up joining the Bitcoin community and becoming a coiner. So it's like, that's very bullish. As well as that, you have Bitcoin exchanges are all an all-time low now for their Bitcoin reserves. So it's just basic supply and demand. So you have, and then another compounding factor is you have all these strategy type companies. So there is this huge glitch when you have Bitcoin and fiat money existing in the same well, in the same world, in the same universe, in that fiat currency tends to go down in value because of inflation, and then Bitcoin tends to go up. So you have this strategy type glitch, the micro strategy type glitch, where you can just have this infinite value creating machine where you just loan the asset. You just sell stock and then buy more Bitcoin and then increase the asset value of your company. And there's all these strategy clones which are coming on board all over the world, like dozens of these things, and they're all doing the same thing. So you've got these huge behemoth strategy type corporations hoovering up these big treasury institutions, just hoovering up all this Bitcoin. You've got the lowest, the all-time lowest Bitcoin reserve on exchanges, and then soon you're going to have a massive increased retail adoption from all this positive impressions. Like, I'm bullish as fuck. We're at the launch pad. Like, this is, you might as well be at $1 Bitcoin and the sky's the limit. Because I'm very, very, very bullish. When you look at all the things which are happening at the same time, and just the lack of people talking about, Bitcoin's being at its all-time high and sort of maintaining it and not dropping, I think we're undervalued, and we're going to go up a lot. And this is where we hit that 240K. I'm obviously not investment advice or whatever, but it's interesting to see that these two egos who are becoming separate, but they both happen to be massive Bitcoiners. Like, I'm sure you probably covered it last week in the show, but Elon Musk was talking about the new direct messaging feature in Twitter, which he's going to build, and it has Bitcoin-like cryptography or something. There's a lot of good Bitcoin. There's just a lot of people talking about Bitcoin in the news cycle, and that's very positive.
Oh, we didn't talk about that Bitcoin cryptography or encrypted message in Twitter. That sounds like a good feature. But I do think, Ben, it's the ultimate tragedy that retail is not buying now. This, like everyone's saying, no one's using Bitcoin, no one's buying Bitcoin. People like Michael Saylor, et cetera, are buying up tons of it to just hold on to it and do nothing with. And retail is silent. I think.
No, let me tell you, Thomas. So actually, I hate the Michael Saylor ideology of Bitcoin just being a store of value. The reason it has value is because people built this apolitical, digitally native currency which didn't have trusted third parties, and you didn't have to sacrifice your privacy to use. And that's why it had value, because there's now this new money on the internet, and then that has a bunch of people getting involved in it, which makes the price go up, and that's why it has value. So within its thread, it always has to have Bitcoin as full payments. But what has happened with the Saylor ideology is all these companies like the Steak and Shake and all these retail companies, and now with the more friendly regulatory environment, one of the best ways for them to accumulate Bitcoin on their balance sheet just as an asset is to offer their products and services for Bitcoin payments. It's a bit like dollar cost averaging in Bitcoin. Okay, you can't convince your shareholders to go out and buy a big fat stack of Bitcoin to put on your asset balance, but you can just suddenly accept Bitcoin payments and then just have some Bitcoin dribbling in, and maybe it's a very fractional percent of your asset value of your company, but over time that will grow. So there's an incentive for retailers, like big corporations and companies, to start accepting Bitcoin payments. Having a Bitcoin treasury is the in thing. It's so like in vogue at the moment that I think a lot of retail adoption will happen off the back of the Saylor ideology. So some good came from that asshole.
Well, I don't think that we know that Shake and Stake is going to hold their Bitcoin. I think it's going to be the same thing as the United States, where maybe they're collecting the coins and the change of the Bitcoin the same way that the United States is allegedly going to claim all of the stolen property and then say that it suddenly belongs to the, I don't know, United States Investment in Bitcoin Division. But I do think that these companies are not promoting Bitcoin. They're just promoting holding Bitcoin.
There's just the financial tools. So like the very fact that I think it's GameStop, isn't it? Like buying a whole bunch of Bitcoin as well. Like the very fact you can have this thing on your, as an asset, you can have this thing on your, which adds value to your company, and then it just generally goes up in value. And then your equity, your shares are worth, if you're a public company, are then worth more money. So your share price goes up, and that makes everything
I
better
think
because you have
again,
more
it's like
investment.
the monkey's paw, where if you touch it, I think the winners will be like you say, Saylor, GameStop, these companies that are going all in, putting tons of money in, really establishing a reserve. If Steak and Shake is collecting the change, if the United States government is collecting only the stolen property, only the things left behind in the lost and found room, we're not going to have a large treasury, and we're going to look at it later and be all bummed about it.
But that's, I
Just
mean, that's like
gambling
that.
fallacy. The guy
That's
that's
like,
betting the big
yeah,
stacks, you
but
know.
yeah, but that's the traditional. You could say that about traditional, just retail investors. Like, if they don't invest all their money and everything they have into Bitcoin, then they're not going to benefit from it. Like, it is better to have
That's
some
pretty
rather
much
than
what
none.
Saylor was saying last week, Ben. Even though I know you don't like him, he made a heck of a speech, and he almost had me going there because for a minute I forgot that I'm not crazy well off like Saylor. I haven't already spent all of my money on yachts and boats and whatever. But he was like, not only should you invest everything you have and put all of your money into Bitcoin, you should probably create a company where you then, I don't know, dot dot dot, other people invest for smaller amounts of return and then use that money to buy more Bitcoin and use that to get more investors to buy more Bitcoin. He basically said we should all be sailors, which was pretty smart. He also promoted asking AI everything. But what do you
It's
think about sailors?
it's if you play it through, that you have this asset which just goes up in value so much, and has such backing as well, and all these big financial institutes, then people are going to start selling houses and then buying Bitcoin, because they'll be like, well, that old thing of, if you sell some Bitcoin, you feel bad because 3 years later it's worth 10x or 100x what it was worth. That people will start thinking about that in like, I didn't buy Bitcoin. They'll be like, why didn't I buy this? Why didn't I buy that? And that, why, I've got this house, and if I'd sold it a year ago and bought Bitcoin, I would have tripled my money. So yeah, I have no idea what this sort of impact this will
Well,
have
and that's
on.
what Saylor's promoting is he's like, you should basically mortgage your house. You should mortgage your everything. You should mortgage your business. You should create a trust and then put everything in there and then mortgage it and trust it and deed it and get more Bitcoin. And I like it, but I also feel like the one point where Bitcoin does dip, where people lose the faith in it, something blah, blah, blah happens, dot, 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 quantum computing, could be anything, whatever boogeyman you want to put in there, used to be regulation. It could drop suddenly. And for a Saylor, who, even though he goes out there and says he's not diversified, one should assume he still owns his own home. If he wants to get on TV and say, I'm Michael Saylor, I mortgage my own home, Tom, look at this,
Good
that'd be
shout.
great. And I'd say, way to go, champion. And if he didn't have a dozen other homes or whatever. But this idea that he's out there and you want to get your home on the mortgage when you only have the one home, you only have half the mortgage or whatever. But we need to get Victoria in here because it reminds me of the South Sea bubble. Are they telling us to overinvest at the top, Victoria? These maniacs who have come in the door recently and just seem to have their hair on fire, and they're obviously well off already. So we should just listen to them, right?
Yeah, I think it's a shame for the retail market really, because with a lot of these companies investing in Bitcoin, yes, it's making the price go up, but the point at which people really need it is when the financial system collapses, which we're all predicting. Um, and of course, by that stage, because the Bitcoin price has been so high for so long, all the people who are finding out about it now, even if they invest a little bit, the little bit that they own will drop in value along with the financial system short term. They've only been able to acquire it when it was very expensive. I mean, a big criticism of Bitcoin when it first came out was that it was a Ponzi scheme. And actually it wasn't a Ponzi, Bitcoin in its pure iteration is not a Ponzi scheme, but all of these companies investing in Bitcoin are making it a Ponzi scheme. And it is it's not good. This is what caused the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression in 1929. It was all of these people. The stock market, the monetary system was changing because of the First World War, which had caused a number of distortions in the financial system. Um, and this is what led to the Roaring Twenties in America in the beginning of the 20s. But by 1929, after everyone had got into this routine of buying shares and getting loans from the bank to buy more shares, the point at which someone decides to sell or that they're not going to buy anymore is the point at which the whole thing collapses. And going back to the Bitcoin price, which is, the story that you started with, in that article, it said that long-term holders of Bitcoin, they were taking profits at the rate of 1.47 billion per day last week. So, there's a mantra in the financial system that you sell in May and go away, because the financial markets get really quiet over the summer. And, now that you've got all of these financial experts using Bitcoin as a financial instrument, it could well be that, we've recently seen the peak. I mean, typically the Bitcoin price tends to top about 18 months after the last halving. And of course, we're about 15 months after the last halving now. So we're kind of around the time that the price of Bitcoin normally tops out. And of course, you've got all these financial experts now who can manage the price, who will invest, and they're taking their profits for the summer. And so that could have been the high. It could have been. I'm hoping that, it goes up a little bit further, but, we're living in a different situation now. The price took off early this time, and it could be that, we've peaked early as well. So yeah, I don't think it's, given what Bitcoin was originally designed for, I think the situation at the moment is actually quite disappointing. It's great for the people who invested early, who want to make money from it. But in terms of what Bitcoin is actually designed to do, I think for the average person, I'm not surprised a lot of them are sitting on the sidelines. If I hadn't learned about Bitcoin at this point, I'd be interested, but I wouldn't be investing right now. Typically it's when it's starting to be talked about in the news media that's just before the price is likely to crash. So yeah, sorry to be a downer, but I think it's also important to be realistic. It's a great asset, but really understand what it is that you're dealing with.
I'm not feeling hype. Like it still feels like a rumor to me, even though everyone's talking about Bitcoin, and then even though we're all-time high and there isn't any Bitcoin on the exchanges, it doesn't feel hypey. That's what's weird. Like it should
It's
feel
hypey with the
hypey.
corporation's.
Like it
Michael Saylor's hypey.
that's true. He's hypey. Fair enough.
It's just like there's no one else left to say anything because Michael Saylor's saying it all, so we're all just listening to him.
Maybe, yeah, the retail isn't hypey. That's a very good point. Yeah, good point.
I think that we're generating artificial hype now. In the old days, we actually used to have real hype, and you would feel it because you'd feel it. It'd be viral because it's viral. But now we do have money. We do have advertising. We have this ridiculous conference that I attended that was full of marketing and pointlessness. And I think that's ringing true, Ben. I think you're seeing the hollowness. And I also think, like Victoria was saying, that we're in a position where I like Jack Mallers and I like Strike, and he's out there saying, we're not rehypothecating our Bitcoin. And unlike Saylor, he's providing a link to their account. You can go look at the Bitcoin. But as Saylor said, we really don't know what's going on inside their company structure. And not that there's anything wrong with Strike, but maybe something with Strategy or Y or Z or X or one of these other companies could be wrong, and the Bitcoin they have on the balance sheets isn't there, or they loan it out like Victoria's saying, and we've recreated the exact problem that Satoshi was trying to solve, where you could hold your own assets and you could prove that you hold them, and you wouldn't have them in some bank where they don't really hold them, but they lend them out, ... so on and so forth. We would have recreated the exact problem.
Dominic Frisby said earlier this week that MicroStrategies, that's the new wave of shitcoins, is the MicroStrategies. And arguably, to your point, yeah.
Well, and smarter people than us, Ben, are doing some kind of stock market magic where they buy micro and sell Bitcoin, or they sell Bitcoin and buy micro, or they've ledged them together and they're able to now make percentages. And I worry also about what Victoria said about all the smart people selling in May and then just dumping on us and then having a bad summer. Let's have a good summer. I want to see it go up some more. But any more on the Elon versus Trump thing? I do think that's what's depressing the market right now, as well as the post-conference dump where everyone goes to the conference, they all get fired up, they all go home, set up their wallets, put all of their money into Bitcoin, all their investment money, investing wisely, of course, with their own due diligence, blah, blah, blah. And then the price always goes down, right, Ben? The bigger the conference, the bigger the fall. This conference, $115,000 Bitcoin when it starts, 104, 103 now. How about that?
I don't. I mean, again, I haven't seen the dump. It doesn't. This is the thing. It's not a typical Bitcoin post Bitcoin conference dump. Honestly, for me, we're at the launch pad. It's everyone's like, wow, Bitcoin's $1. Isn't it amazing that it's worth $1? It's a bit ridiculous. It must crash. It can never be worth more than $1. That's what I feel like. It feels like nothing, like water off a duck's back. It feels like the beginning of something. Yeah, I think we're in kind of the flippening. There's going to be there's going to be this feedback loop. This what's it called? The old brain. But there's going to be this feedback loop, this snowball, which causes a lot of companies and corporations just to have Bitcoin treasuries, to accumulate Bitcoin, stop producing stuff. People mortgage their houses. Maybe the AI produces all the things, and we get Star Trek fabricators or whatever they're called, and we don't need companies anymore to build stuff for us. And it feels like a flippening. It feels like everything's changing. And I think Bitcoin is the linchpin. And it's funny because it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. We build this thing for the next crisis, but ultimately this thing could potentially cause the next crisis.
Isn't that always the way? And it would be quite a thing, Ben, if it started going up, $1,000 a day, $10,000 a day, $100,000 a day. Remember, we are still in price discovery, and the world has never switched to a digital asset that no one controls before. It's never happened. So we all try to look it up in the history books, and the media looks it up. And they're like, what did we do last time? Was it 10%, 20%? No one knows.
And the very fact it can shift still, so in such a volatile way, means that it has potential to double, triple. Sky's the limit.
And the retail won't be there. They think it's a scam. They're tired of hearing about it. It went up and it went down. Their attention span's really short. You tell them this, you tell them that. They say, oh, my buddy was into that. My cousin, he made so much money, but not me. Not me. And so they sit on the sidelines. They get nothing. You get nothing on the sidelines. But here we have the truth, the source of all truth, the magic 8-ball, the predictor of predictors. Ben Ark, will the price of Bitcoin be higher or lower this time next week?
I mean, yeah, obviously not investment advice, but I think we're radically higher. We're in the beginning of a hockey stick. The moment.
Victoria Jones, we finally have people who disagree. Tell Ben that it will be lower.
Yeah, just to be contrarian, I'll say lower.
Lower, the negative hockey stick, whatever a hockey stick looks like going down. The scratch of the bear's paw, not the upward trend of the bull's horn.
A floppy
But what
penis.
about the 8-ball? What about the real truth, the predictor? Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Don't count on it. Don't count on it, says the pessimistic ball. Moving on to issue 2, which we kind of talked about already, but we'll talk about again. Michael Saylor's strategy ups its Bitcoin bet with a $1 billion stock offering. Saylor's strategy has quadrupled its previously announced $250 million stock offering as a new funding avenue for its Bitcoin investments. Meanwhile, Japan's Strategy Metaplanet, who is handing out bright orange safety hats at the conference, orange is done, boys, is going to try to buy 91,000 Bitcoin in the next 18 months, adding another $1 billion to their already $1 billion holding of Bitcoin. And Donald Trump's Truth Social officially files for a Bitcoin ETF as the company deepens its crypto push. This is on the backs of previously announcing a Bitcoin Treasury. Unclear whether they're going to buy the Treasury themselves or have you, the fans, invest in the Treasury. Victoria Jones, we talked about it a little bit already, but pretty much talk about it every week. It's the goose that keeps laying golden eggs. It's the pirate at 40 strategy. We're all too dumb to have thought of it. Michael Saylor is a genius. We're all idiots. We should just buy Bitcoin, make companies, and buy Bitcoin and never, ever make anything ever again. And the entire world just goes infinite jest into Bitcoin. And everyone has to spend all their time reading that book so they can figure out what I'm talking about.
Yeah, it sounds great and it works really well until it doesn't. And like I say, this was the story of the 1920s. Go back and read your history books and watch what happened then. It's almost exactly the same thing. Michael Saylor's turning Bitcoin into the Ponzi scheme that everyone accused it of being originally when it wasn't. And now ultimately it is, buying anything, yeah, buying an incorruptible asset with leverage. I mean, I've said this before, but it's like an immovable object meets an immovable force meets an immovable object, and that's what you've got with Bitcoin and the existing financial system. And at some point, Bitcoin is slightly more immovable than the existing financial system is irresistible. And so Bitcoin will eventually win, but it's going to be a hell of a fight. And of course, as the financial system goes down, all of these companies are vulnerable. Most people don't understand that our existing governments rely on the way in which the financial system is currently structured. And so the thing is, when the financial system breaks, you've got governments that are going to break, and it's government that governs the rules that surround these corporations. And so if government breaks, there's no one to uphold the rules of these corporations. And so all of these corporations are holding your Bitcoin supposedly in an ETF, which is a government sanctioned document. But if the government doesn't exist anymore, how are you going to be able to claim whatever profit these companies are making? And of course, they're selling shares to say that, what they're doing is honorable, but if there's no one around to enforce it, it's a free-for-all. And okay, there will be some people who want to protect their reputation and will still do the decent thing, but in the short term, and again, if you go back in history and look at the South Sea bubble, this is exactly what happened. If you want to know why the French went into revolution whereas the British escaped, it's because the British managed the collapse of the South Sea bubble much better than France did. And ultimately it was about saving face and politics. I think the prime minister at the time, he basically confiscated the assets of the people who ran the South Sea bubble and then redistributed it to people who were the victims. And that did a lot in order to rectify the situation, whereas France was a complete basket case. It was a huge contrast and it affected their currencies ongoing. That history is the foundation of how money has worked in the past, and all of it was based on the way in which governments operated. Our existing financial system is intimately tied to the way government works. When the financial system breaks, which Bitcoin is destined to do, it will break government as well, which will break these corporations. And so this is what we're looking at. So all of these people who are getting excited about Bitcoin being on company balance sheets, I mean, you have no idea the setup that this is going to break. The best way to hold your Bitcoin is in your own wallet, in your own possession. And unfortunately, with these companies getting involved, it's making it out of the reach of a lot of the general population. And that's quite worrying, I think. I think a lot of people should pay attention to what's happening, and there will come a better time to invest. But I think now it might be a mistake right now.
It does seem like there's a disconnect between investors and the reality of Bitcoin. They need to be seeking it out, learning about it, holding their own coins, figuring out a good solution. Instead, they're just being lazy. They hear Strategy's holding, they hear Metaplanet's holding, depending on their country. They invest in the largest pool out there. And this way they can use, like we've said before, all of their stock market tools. They can use the longs and the leverage longs and the naked shorts and all of their Bloomberg terminals right there. They don't have to go to some weird website like Coinbase. So you can see why they're into it, and you see how it's kind of infecting their brain too. But I just want to stand up for the one guy who's like me, who's out there screaming about this, saying, why didn't I do this? Why didn't I make a Michael Saylor Bitcoin holding company? It's because this industry would have run you out of here on a rail. If you had showed up in 2007 or 2013 and said, it's so easy, I'm going to buy all the Bitcoin and hold it for you, people would have attacked you. They would have pilloried you. It would have been similar to when one of those mining pools got too big and everyone said, hey, the mining pool is getting too big. And suddenly it fractures in half. And there's, mining pool cash and Satoshi's mining pool and a bunch of different mining pools. it would have gone crazy. Even if you were Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Ballmer or the Google CEOs that go to Burning Man, and he said, I'm going to buy all the Bitcoin and hold it for you, they would have just laughed in your face. I don't know what's happened, why it's so different. Saylor can make a speech promoting it. He can say lots of smart things like you should look everything up in the AI before you call a lawyer, before you call a dentist, before you call a doctor, whatever. You should look at a mechanic. You should look it up in the AI. You have a superpower now. He was right about that. But Ben, was he right? Should we all make our own Bitcoin treasury companies? Have we missed out?
Sorry, I think it's going to happen, and to me, it's kind of a concern because we've always said this before. You know, when people are investing in Bitcoin companies, we were like, just buy Bitcoin, hold Bitcoin, don't do anything, and you'll probably make more money, rather than spending it on stuff and trying to accumulate Bitcoin in by whatever means, like just buy some Bitcoin with the capital, sit, wait, and then you'll have more money. And it is sort of a scary thing. Like it really is. There is a glitch. Like we're in this unique period in history. It's as if gold had never existed, and then suddenly people found gold, and they were like, "Oh, okay." And then suddenly you throw gold into the market, and the market goes nuts. What Michael Saylor has done. I mean, I really don't like the guy because he does just recycle off our talking points and the talking points of Bitcoiners, and he's far more eloquent than we are, and he's able to, you know, have these lovely sound bites in the news. But he has shown with this MicroStrategy, this now tried and tested method of just having a Bitcoin treasury. And if you're a company, why wouldn't you have a Bitcoin? Why wouldn't you try and accumulate Bitcoin? Why wouldn't you buy Bitcoin? Why wouldn't you have it on your balance sheet? So yeah, I think like I said, with payments, you know, one of the best ways to do that would be to offer payments. So you think about something like Twitter, like Elon Musk probably in Twitter or X, whatever the fuck he calls it these days, he probably will add Bitcoin payments. Like this is the flippening. This is someone has Michael Saylor. He's shown the world that it's quite profound that Bitcoin exists alongside these fiat currencies, and that you have this opt-out money, and everyone can buy it, everyone can hold it, everyone can, you know, purchase a hardware wallet and then can hold this bearer asset, and the world's waking up to it. This is kind of the moment.
It is like other people like yourself, myself, or Andreas, they see it. They see all the technology, all the things we could do with it, the people we could help. People like Saylor have a different and a unique superpower where they see it just for the money thread and they see just the wealth part. And we've had a lot of different wealth takers and people who made altcoins and ICOs and dots and 10,000 NFT projects and whatever. But this is a new kind of thing because he had so much wealth to begin with. He had the company. He was a .comer back in the day. He used to have huge parties on yachts, and you could read about it, but no one does because your attention span's about 10 minutes. So there's no history. But people have heard of this Michael Saylor guy. He's not pirate at 40. He's a convincing guy to Wall Street people.
But
and
if you look
really successful in borrowing this money.
Yeah, so if you look at the technology space, so it is filtering down. Like it is what he does with MicroStrategy is available and is starting to become available through some of our technology solutions. So if you look at something like Firefish, .io, it's endorsed by a bunch of very good technical people who I respect within the Bitcoin space, and that's just the ability to be able to, if you want to buy something with fiat, then to do a collateralized loan. So you basically give them double the amount in Bitcoin. They do a time lock transaction. We have this programmable money now. You then get this peer to peer. So you then get the fiat payment, the money in your bank, and you essentially when you add time into Bitcoin through time lock transactions are very powerful because you can effectively spend your Bitcoin in the future when you think it's probably going to be worth more money, which you probably will because money is going down, Bitcoin's going up. So with something like Firefish, you can take some of your Bitcoin and do a collateralized loan for some cash. And I know a lot of people who get paid in Bitcoin and they use something like Firefish, and effectively they're becoming their own little MicroStrategies. If they were then going to buy more Bitcoin, I mean, you are leveraging And if the
Well, and
price were
I
to
think
drop
it's
50%,
unavoidable.
you would
I
get
think we're
wiped
all
out.
we're all
But
going to do it. It's going to be addictive. But I also think, like Victoria says, we're stacking deck chairs on the Titanic. You know, you go 500 loans deep, I go 1,000 loans deep. The next guy's 1,500 loans deep. MicroStrategy is a billion loans deep. Eventually, one of them's going to fail.
yeah, I don't know. I think probably this is why Michael Saylor, it seems to be, we've spent a lot of this show talking about Michael Saylor, but this is probably why Michael Saylor seems to be encouraging a lot of other strategy type companies to exist. And then also for regular normal companies to have a Bitcoin treasury,
I mean, you
to kind
have
of
to. Like, whether
diversify that risk.
let's say Bitcoin's the real deal. It's not the real deal. If you're Saylor, you're way out there on this Bitcoin strategy. Even if you found out tomorrow, you're like, it was a fraud. There's really 42 million units, you know, whatever. Satoshi holds twice as many. You have to stick with it. You have to get more companies to join. All the things that they accused us of, all in the past, when they're like, it's a Ponzi, it's a scam, it's rolling because you guys got the ball rolling with the network effect and all that. And then Chase would actually take credit for it. Like, it wasn't like a viral computer geek network effect where we willed this money into existence. We willed it into having value. We traded 10,000 of them for a pizza 4 times to make it have value. Like, you guys aren't like, the internet did this. This thing that had no value has value now because of the internet. Like, not any other thing. Like, you on the internet made it have value, not Michael Saylor. But he makes it have value now. Like they say, the Bible was in Latin only, but now it's in local languages. But still, only corporations are hearing the word. But you can hear the word at worldcryptonetwork.com, where we've got 4,418 videos you could watch for 3 months, 22 days straight, and 4 hours. And you wouldn't have to take any breaks ever, just like Infinite Jest. Moving on to issue 3, Ark Invest buys $373 million of Circle shares on debut, trims holdings in Coinbase, Robinhood, and its own Bitcoin ETF to make room. Circle saw a new 200% surge in its share price on the first day of trading under the symbol CRCL, exceeding $96 at one point. Circle had 2 previous attempts to go public, once via a SPAC, a SPAC merger in 2021, and again in 2024 with a S1 registration filing. It finally has a latest SEC with an IPO in April. Plans concern that it might get derailed. However, President Trump seems to have allowed it. Other crypto companies such as Kraken and Animoca Brands will be watching its performance closely. Victoria Jones, what do you think about Circle going public and the heavy investment from Ark Invest?
Well, it's not that surprising because obviously Ark is very familiar with Bitcoin and obviously is paying attention to the digital space. I think they're also famous for investing in Tesla just before they took off. They're very interested in innovative technologies, and of course, there's a lot of talk about stable coins at the moment. Um, and I think a lot of these companies, they like to catch these investments. You know, they're often in a privileged position and they have access to investing in these products before they hit the stock market. And so they're aware of when they take off, and often that's the point at which a lot of these companies do their best because there's been a lot of anticipation of them appearing on the market. So not that surprising. I think it's interesting that obviously they've skimmed off their own Bitcoin ETF in order to fund it, which is a sign of the fact that, you know, these sophisticated investors understand the Bitcoin price cycle, and we do appear to be reaching towards its end for this cycle. And I think, you know, that's probably an acknowledgement of that. You know, if I was Kathy Wood, I'd probably be doing exactly the same thing. And of course, even governments are getting interested in stable coins now. I think stable coins are a problem because, you know, they're basically central bank digital currencies under another name. And so and so, you know, I don't support them at all. But of course, you know, a lot of these financial pundits, they're in the job of making money for their investors and for their clients. And so they will understand how these narratives tend to cause certain things to go up in value, even if it's not, you know, a long-term solution. So I think it's always worth being aware of what people's motives are. And of course, Ark's motive is to make money for their clients. It's not necessarily to do right by humanity. And I'll leave it there.
It's amazing how buy and hold works right up until you have a better investment opportunity. And we can confirm that so far today, at least as of today, Circle Internet Group, CRCL, closed up 29% up today at $107.70. It's up as well in after hours trading, up 4% at 112. Ben, Ark, what do you think about Circle finally going public and making a big splash?
Got Square, you got Circle. I think we should make Triangle, Thomas. That's our company. It's Triangle.
It's all about shapes, polygon. There's a lot of shapes
Yeah,
out
it used
there.
to be fruit for phone companies, and now it's shapes for crypto companies.
Yeah. I think the less sides you have, the cooler you are. So Triangle's not been taken yet. We should take it.
Line. We call it line.
Yeah,
Already,
just
You even
line.
got hex
already
for
happening in
hexagon.
Saudi
So
Arabia.
That's true.
Hex
Or
is good too.
trapezium.
Pentagon. A lot of options.
Yeah, man. Fuck. Trapezium is like the launch pad for Bitcoin because we just buy Bitcoin.
That's a trampesium because it's a trampoline and it bounces.
I forgot to mention in that previous topic that if you actually read the article, it said that it was used for working capital, the raising of $1 billion. So I was just imagining Michael Saylor buying himself a new yacht because it's working capital. Anyway, don't take me back there because I'll get distracted. What were we talking about?
He's going to take that
Circle.
working capital,
Circle.
buy that man with the VR thing. We're talking about Circle. It's like a Tether competitor.
Yeah, I think stablecoins. Yeah, I think there's a good reason why there's a lot of like attention on Circle, on stable coins at the moment. In that, people know that the general populace isn't going to accept a CBDC, and like Victoria said, a lot of these companies like Tether and a lot of these other stable coins, the technology stack behind them and how much of the actual value they have, which backs the stable coin, like is questionable. But I will say, like for many years, people have been saying that Tether's going to fail and it hasn't failed. It's continued because the price of Bitcoin went up. It's continued to be able to honor the amount of people using Tether. In unbanked regions where we go and we shill Bitcoin and the amazing tool set of Bitcoin, they end up often just using Tether because they need a stable medium of exchange above anything else. And why wouldn't they? Because like one of the major properties of good money is that it's stable. What you have in the stablecoin space more recently, which is really exciting, is like Tether on Lightning. And then I'm all for it. I like the experimentation which is happening with stable coins. People in the world need stable medium of exchange. And actually, within the tech stack of all the tools we have, it is possible to build stable coins without a trusted third party, which keep a stable peg without a trusted third party. And I think it's something we've spoken about at length on the show before. So yes, you can have people benefiting from this volatile asset of Bitcoin and it going up a lot in value and all these micro strategies and whatever else. But also, when you look at like Tether on Lightning, you can have stable medium of exchange with access to this incredible Bitcoin tool set, which we have, which, you can bootstrap unbanked economies where, 90% of the population don't have bank accounts. So we're in exciting times, really exciting times. And I kind of, I embrace the sort of stable coin industry. Obviously, we need better technical solutions for having stability without trusted third parties. But I think it's kind of coming. Like there's a demand for it, and I know that Tether itself is investing heavily in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin ecosystem. There is a lot of scams out there. So we're involved in Bitcoin. It's like London. We're in central London, and we're looking at all the beautiful museums and the big old historical buildings. But then there's I don't want to upset anyone in our audience who might be from outer London. But then there's outer London, which isn't quite central London. Well, this is Bitcoin, so we're in central Bitcoin, and in our little world of central Bitcoin, like everything makes sense. We all know each other. and we all know the different companies and projects, and you know, everyone's rubbing shoulders with each other. It's lovely. There is this increasing like layer of, I shouldn't have done that, not London analogy. I'm sorry, anyone who lives in London. There's this increasing layer of shit. So a lot of the shitcoiners have come out from shitcoin land and they've come into Bitcoin land, and they've got all these like, they have the whole conferences, and they talk about these like layer one, layer two. We're not a shitcoin because we use Bitcoin for the gas. And there's all these like shitty, scammy projects which exist now in Bitcoin, which didn't exist before, which we don't even see because it's like completely, and they don't know about us. Like they think that that's Bitcoin. They're existing this thing which they think is Bitcoin, and a lot of them are piggybacking off the stable coin narrative, which is quite depressing. But I think the reality is that the world unbanked regions need stable medium of exchange, and if it's done on Bitcoin, like Tether are doing now with Lightning, Tether on Lightning, using Taro, then that's kind of cool. And I hope Circle, with this capital, invest in some of that stuff. I'm sure they will. And like, if you look at the US dollar, like rather than the US try and make their own CBDC, it kind of makes sense that they just somehow use Tether. Like everyone uses it. The world's flooded with Tether. All these unbanked regions using Tether. It's basically doing what paper US dollars were doing before. So I don't know how it would work, but I could imagine that the US just ends up, Thomas, you'll end up just using Tether to pay for your McDonald's.
That does sound right, Ben. I mean, I know we used to talk about in the old days, the unbanked and banking the unbanked with Bitcoin, and I still want to do it. But you really are right. It's a Western sentiment that we think that they can survive price discovery, that they can survive the early stages of Facebook stock with their money, with the money that they need to buy stuff, right? And the thing that we were trying to sell them was you won't get inflated away over 100 years. You'll get wiped out in a weekend, which is the same thing that they already have with their bad inflation and their lousy economies. So yes, from the same way, Ben, just as we missed the boat on Ethereum and a dozen other altcoins and whatever, the same thing with Tether. I look at it, I think that's dirty. That's ideologically bad. They have bank accounts, they have treasuries. That's not what a hodler wants. You know, Bitcoin hodler wants exposure to those 12 days a market a year where it goes up. I saw even Adam Back was saying recently, that classic Bitcoin line that, you know, there's 12 days a year where it goes up. And if you're out of the market, you're going to miss those 12 for sure. And Tether was missing all of those, but they were also missing all the downs. And like Ben's saying, for people that are living paycheck to paycheck, which is not just the United States, but also the developing world, that makes a lot of sense to hold something like Tether. And as we've seen from the market, from the fees, from the money they make off the hodl, off the VIG or whatever they call it, I don't understand all the gambling terms, but the end of the story is Tether makes tons of money. Tether makes tons of money. It's a huge company. They have endless, unlimited resources. God forbid we never offend Tether. But Victoria, what do you think about what Ben's saying here? That they really need stable coins. The thing that we hate is the thing that they should have had in the first place. Andreas should have been out here pumping his own Ponzi scheme and selling a stable coin, Andreas coin. He could have held all the Bitcoin for us.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I picked up in one of the articles that you shared that apparently the retail market for Bitcoin hasn't been quite the same since 2017. And I think that's the point at which Tether really started to take off. Because until Tether was invented, Bitcoin was the only thing we had. And it's not just third world countries that need to balance their finances. I mean, even in the West, there are very few people who can cope with the dramatic ups and downs of Bitcoin. And of course, in this stage of its development, it is helpful to have something else that you can exchange Bitcoin for. And I think until Bitcoin becomes stable as an asset and is more widely adopted, then Tether definitely has its place. But of course, you know, the moment you know, the financial system collapses and the government collapses and corporate treasuries collapse, you know, that's not the case anymore. And who knows when that point will be? You know, maybe many of these substitutes are helping people to adapt. And maybe, you know, humanity needs another 20 years before, you know, we can cope with that ultimate catastrophe or disaster. We all know it was going to happen. The only people, but people have been predicting that since 1971 when Nixon took the US off the gold standard. There've probably been people predicting it since 1914 when, the Britain decided that it had to come off the gold standard in order to fund the First World War. People have been predicting this for a long time. And of course, every time there's a new invention, it kind of gives us a little bit more wiggle room in order to kind of manage our finances. And of course, everyone hopes that the transition can be made in a smooth way. But there are lots of shocks along the way, and it's helpful to understand history and to understand exactly what you're dealing with, because that helps you manage the fluctuations. In some respects, I'm glad that Tether exists because it does help, with those fluctuations. But of course, you have to understand what the long-term implications are, because when the US dollar fails, then Tether no longer has a place, or maybe it has a place temporarily because the banks aren't working, but at least you've got a token that mimics the US dollar that people can use in the meantime. So, it may well have a place in that scenario as well. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the subject.
I have memories from iRobot, like the movie happened to me. And I remember very clearly they had trailers and they were spray painted on the side. You could buy Bitcoin there. And the crisis had come and they went back to real Bitcoin, not MicroStrategy Bitcoin, not stock market Bitcoin, not Jack Bitcoin or whatever it is. And the other thing I think changed maybe around 2017, I'm not sure when, but it was a great time when you had to buy Bitcoin before you could buy altcoins. You'd pay the fee on the Bitcoin, you'd pay the fee on the altcoin, good for the exchange, good for the Bitcoin number. It would go up before you'd buy the ETH or the Mega coin or the Mega coin, whatever you're going to get, all those things. So that was good for us too. But let's move on to issue 4. Issue 4, Ross Ulbricht's big Bitcoin donor, allegedly tied to Silk Road successor Alphabay. Chain Analysis told Wired magazine that it tracked a $31 million Bitcoin donation to online black market Silk Road founder Ross Ulbricht, allegedly from a successor market called Alphabay. Allegedly, the gentleman or gentle lady or whatever was a vendor on Alphabay, so they were selling something and getting lots of Bitcoin. They donated $31 million in Bitcoin to Ross Ulbricht's open public amount. Many people speculated that Ross donated the money to himself, even including Beeple Art Graphics, making fun of this idea. Now they say it came from a mixer, it came from Alphabay. It wasn't me, it was the one-armed man. Ben Ark, what do you think? The Dread Pirate Roberts, something no one talks about anymore, but the mild-mannered Ross in his red tie is now $31 million richer.
Yeah, it's a bit. I mean, I don't want to. I don't want to accuse anyone of anything, but I mean, it's a bit like Walt White in Breaking Bad, isn't it? Where it's one of the easiest ways to clean some money is you set up a donation page and then you get an anonymous donor. It kind of reminds me of Charlie Shrem when he came out of prison, and then for like a month he was playing it all humble, like, oh, I'm out of prison, and then he's like, wait there, can I just donate some money? Or I mean, can somebody? Sorry, not me. Can somebody just donate some money to me? And then suddenly Charlie Shrem's blasting around on some super swanky yacht around the Mediterranean. Yeah, crikey. Well, like, you can't tell me that Ross Ulbricht didn't have some stashes of Bitcoin here, there, and everywhere before he was locked up. And back then, 300 Bitcoin wasn't much. So, and now it is a lot. I mean, maybe it was just literally someone buying and selling on Alphabet. I don't really, when I was reading the article, it didn't really make sense to me because it was like they couldn't really. It was like the Chainalysis snitch company which had done the research on it. They were like, oh, it went to coin mixers, thus it's probably from illicit sources, and Alphabay. Like, I couldn't really see the actual evidence to be it being connected to Alphabay. So maybe there was part of the evidence trail of it going through the coin mixers, which they didn't publish. And it was interesting how they'd used like bad coin mixers, like they'd used Jumble and some other crappy coin mixers. But yeah, they didn't. Within the article, I couldn't see where the actual connection was with an Alphabay trader. However, it's nice. He's got some retirement money. Good on him.
It's unclear how the chain analysis or whoever it was sourced their information, Ben, but it does seem to be that there was a takedown of Alphabay, so it's possible that the feds operated them from the inside or had inside access to their Bitcoin accounts, and thus were able to get the source of some of these transactions, maybe leading to more information down the line. As we've said before hundreds of times, Bitcoin is the FBI and law enforcement's best friend. They always track the Bitcoin. And that's why I think this is a perfect thing for Ross to do, because it fits with Ross's OPSEC. The guy who publicly asked, how could I run a drug market to a message board, is the same guy who would send himself $31 million in the light of day just a week or so after making a very public speech on a stage that held the vice president and the president's sons. But I like the Alphabay story. I want it to be that. I don't want it to be Ross that's just so dumb that he's giving themselves. And not that he needs to be humble, but I like the idea of him in a cabin reading some books, taking it easy. He doesn't need to be involved in this industry. He doesn't need $31 million worth of problems. He needs a vacation. I don't know if he's going to get one. Victoria Jones, what do you think? Is this Ross's plan to donate to himself more, what do they call it, three-dimensional chess? He's got the red tie and it's spread to his brain.
Well, if that is what he's doing, he needs to be careful, because otherwise he'll end up right back where he started. So on a different charge. So I don't know. I mean, if it was him, I'd maybe have waited a bit longer. Maybe it's a bit too soon. It's still within the same year. Wait until it's died down a bit and everyone's forgotten who you are, or maybe do it, slower, smaller portions or whatever. But 31 million donation. I mean, of course someone's going to have something to say about that. So I don't know. I think if it is Ross, then it's a pretty dumb move. He could have done it definitely in a smarter way, because even with Breaking Bad, with Walter White, they came in little clumps. He had a lawyer who actually organized for different people across the country to donate, but clearly Ross was too busy in prison to watch Breaking Bad.
Yeah, $30 million in one donation a week after the largest conference in the world, when the whole world's paying attention to the vice president. It's a terrible move. It's a terrible, terrible move. And again, as we've said before, but I will keep hammering home, when I said Alphabay vendor and you said to yourself, drug dealer, you should have said freedom fighter. Because remember, if the drug war was over, this person would be breaking a bad law. They would be like Ross, who made the Silk Road to break bad laws, because libertarians believe you can do what you want with your body, or you can sell what you want to other people, whatever they believe, I'm not sure. Or maybe you can buy whatever you want. You have a lot of rights that he was supporting, that the Alphabay guy that was supporting, that if this was a real pardon, if the drug war was really over, all of those things would be true. If the Bitcoin war was really over, all these things would be true. Instead, we have a temporary thing that they bought, and they're pretending like they bought the end of the drug war. They didn't buy all that. They just got one guy out. And I agree with Ben. Victoria, I hope he doesn't go back. I hope, and that if he goes back, go back for starting Silk Road 2. Be like, I'm the Dread Pirate Roberts. I'm in Malta now. I'm with my friend CZ. He taught me how to run companies from anywhere. And now I'm going to do just great. And then government, also, we're selling drugs again, right?
Also use Nostr Market. Not that we built Nostr Market for such activity, but then people don't need to go. They can just use Nostr Market. Not NIP 15, Russell Ulbricht.
These aren't financial advice, Ross. Like you're
getting. Well, they're not endorsing.
A show called the Bitcoin Group and learned about Nostr Market NIP 15 and created his new Silk Road 2.0.
Yeah, that's a bit like Samurai, isn't it? Like you need to not market to the gangsters. All right, I'm not marketing to the gangsters. I'm just saying theoretically you could use NIP 15.
Our PowerPoint right here under money laundering.
Yeah. This is the target market, gangsters. There was a good comment in the chat there, which is 31 million is peanuts to the red tie gang, and that is true. So the red tie people who are making bank on Bitcoin, I think Ross Ulbricht currently will fly under the radar. And by the time the next administration comes in, they'll have far bigger fish to fry.
I thought you said red tie. I thought you meant Thailand. I was like, that's a spicy meatball. We've got just a couple more stories. They're short. Check it out. Just in, $3.6 trillion asset manager JP Morgan is going to accept Bitcoin and crypto ETFs as collateral for loans. This solves a lot of the presumed problems with Bitcoin loaning, i.e., the company running out on you. A big company like JP Morgan is not going to run out on you. They're going to be able to cover your loan, even if it's a large loan. So this is good for Bitcoin. Also, Jameson Lopp says, the world keeps getting crazier, but the craziest thing is that demand for Bitcoin remains flat. The blockchain is a ghost town. The exchange rate hovers around 100K despite constantly announced massive institutional purchases. Retail interest has never regained 2017 levels. What do you guys think about JP Morgan? And like Jameson Lopp says, we don't seem to have retail with us. As well as last week, you weren't here, that James Howell guy, your fellow countryman, has come up with the idea finally to create ordinals to represent the Bitcoin lost in the dump. He's still after them. Let's go, Victoria Jones. What do you think about those stories? Choose one.
Oh, JP Morgan, I mean, honestly, talk about feeding the fire and feeding the frenzy. I mean, another Bitcoin ETF, really? Something else to fail when everything else goes down. I mean, it's like if you can't beat them, join them. I mean, Jamie Dimon, who was Bitcoin's biggest critic in the early days, um, who runs JP Morgan. I mean, I've seen many clips of him recently talking about problems with the bond market. And so his solution appears to be some kind of Bitcoin ETF because it's what everyone wants right now. So I don't know. I mean, it's just, we've talked about it already, but it's just fuel for the fire, really. Not terribly impressed. And Jameson Lopp, I mean, I think that's where I picked up on the fact that the retail market since 2017 hasn't been the same. I mean, I think that is the problem. I mean, it's the corporations that are now in a feeding frenzy for Bitcoin, and retail are just kind of on the sidelines, watching the racing cars go around the track, waiting for one of them to crash.
It really does seem, and they're going to be very disappointed in a few years when things go up again and they're not on one of those racing cars. The thing that I think we're missing, and I don't know, you guys at home and in the chat, you can let me know, are your friends calling you? I used to get those old calls from high school friends, whatever. Hey, you still into that Bitcoin thing? Did it work out? Whatever. I'm not getting that. I mean, maybe if your friends are Michael Saylor, one of these Wall Street guys, they're excited. The business guys are excited. Those corporations that are people, they're excited. But no, I don't hear it from the normal people. Ben Ark, what do you think? We got Jameson Lopp, retail not returning, JP Morgan accepting crypto, and of course, our friend in the UK is going to create ordinals for those Bitcoin on the hard drive.
Yeah, so 2017 was a very different period. So like Lightning and Liquid weren't really a thing. So you had a lot of payments, just general payments, which were happening on Bitcoin. And then if you talk about like these strategy type companies, they're buying huge sums of Bitcoins, probably like over the counter as big transactions. So yeah, there's fewer transactions on the blockchain. Like you have, a certain amount of block space, and there's fewer transactions, and they're for larger sums of money for some of these, treasury type services or whatever you call them. Plus, you don't have, you now have Lightning and Liquid doing very well for sending pretty large transactions. Yeah, no, yeah. We obviously in Allen Bits we work on it's a payment server, and people these days, they can send $1,000, couple of $1,000 through Lightning, and they do. Before they would send that through Bitcoin, and then that would clog the block space, and you would have high transaction fees. But transaction fees, it's kind of cool because it's like that's kind of the point, like transaction fees haven't gone up. Like they sort of bounce between one sat per byte or 5 sats per byte, but yeah, they haven't really gone up that much, and that's it. I think that's kind of a good thing. It means that some of the off-chain stuff's working. And then I can imagine that with these, JP Morgans and Michael Saylors and whatever else, they're doing over the counter trades with big Bitcoin holders and governments and whatever else to accumulate that Bitcoin. They're not going onto Coinbase and making gazillions of different transactions. So perhaps the retail adoption is where it was in 2017, and it's just that you have those extra factors which you're not kind of, putting in the mix. So it's I mean, I imagine the Bitcoin fees will go up a little bit because, as I said, there's that the impression lag effect. So wait a couple of weeks when everyone starts Googling Bitcoin because they've heard it in the news cycle, and I'm sure it will go up a little bit, but not too much because it's all working. We have off-chain payments, and it works.
Well, I watched that Michael Saylor speech, and he implied that it would be easy, that my friends and family would accept Bitcoin the first time I mentioned it to them, that the old people would give all of their money to the young and let them not only keep it, but invest it and gamble it so they could have a better future longer into the distance when the old people aren't there. And checking in with the chat, let's see, they say, Starship says no interest from retail among his friends. Glenn says Bitcoin is still shady in most people's eyes. They're not getting the interest here. I agree with everyone else. They say they're worried that Ross might end up back in prison. Jack E is surprised that Ross said he rented a cabin to grow mushrooms to sell on the Silk Road. There are limits to the pardon. It's a pretty tight pardon. I wouldn't try to expand it by saying, hey, I've been speeding. Hey, I've been running people over in the backyard. I wouldn't add those things. Glenn says Bitcoin is still shady in most people's eyes, and now they think they can't afford it because it's 100K. So
that's probably I think that's probably pretty true that like general retail investors will see the price of it and they'll think, oh, well, I missed the boat and I can't afford it. Yeah, and they're still to learn that they can just buy a piece of it, a small piece.
Yep, and it'll be the same thing when it's $1 million. They'll be when it goes to for us, it was like 100 to 1,000, where you're like, oh, I missed it. For these people, their 100 to 1,000 will be $100,000 to $1 million, and they'll miss that boat. But we're running out of time, so let's go to predictions or story of the week. Victoria Jones, are you ready with a prediction or a story of the week?
Yes, well, my story of the week is that I finally, released the project that I've been working on for the last year. I'm working with a software developer that lives close to me locally, and we've been creating some videos to teach people about Bitcoin. So Thomas is just sharing the page from my articles page on my website, satoshispage.com. You can see there's a clip of one of the previous World Crypto Network episodes that I put at the bottom just to keep people in touch with that. But there's a video which is like a trailer, which is showing what we've been doing with some of the work we've been putting together. And so we're teaching people about hot wallets, cold wallets, how to build their own node. A lot of these things have been filmed, but it takes a bit of a while to edit all the videos and then put it into a course. But basically, this is what we've been working on. So, in spite of the fact that you've got all of these companies trying to buy all the Bitcoin, what we really want to focus on is teaching people how to use the Bitcoin and actually build it for themselves. And so, if anyone's interested, you can go onto my webpage and watch that video. And then there's a button further down the page which takes you to the products page, which shows you some of the products that we've been working on. The only one we've got available at the moment is cold wallets. And there's a free starter guide, which is you can send to family and friends in order to tell them, which gets them started with Bitcoin. And then obviously once you become more advanced, you can invest in some of these courses in order to teach you a bit more about what's going on. So check that out. We've spent quite a lot of time working on it. We started working on this about a year ago. So there's a lot of work that's gone into it, and hopefully people will find it useful.
That's great. And people can check it out at satoshispage.com. Also, it's a great time if you want to put your own story of the week into the chat. We already have Starship's story. He's been playing a game called Behemoth in virtual reality. He says the sword fighting system is the best, feels like a real battle. That sounds pretty fun, although I think the last VR or maybe Wii game I played, you get your arms pretty sore waggling those swords at hundreds of enemies. Ben, Ark, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
I was playing one of those games, the VR games, and it felt pretty brutal because you stab someone in the game, because it was like a gladiator arena, I can always called us on the Quest, and you had these swords, and then you would hit the guy, and you would stab him. But what was macabre about it was, unless you really lunged, the sword wouldn't go in. It would kind of ricochet off them. Like if you hit them on the head, it would kind of ricochet unless you really whacked them, and then it would stick in their heads. And it was like it just felt too real. And I thought I mean, this can't be good. But I'm sure Starship's not going to go on
I
a
played that
slaughter
zombie
rampage.
one at Josh's house on the Oculus once, and oh, you shoot so many zombies and they're coming at you from all angles. And by the end of it, it's like mission missile control or missile command. Eventually, you lose at the end, right? And the
Yeah,
zombies get you. It was scary. I would take off the helmet thing. I'd be like, oh, I'm so glad I'm not here with the zombies anymore.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good stuff. I mean, like it'd be so cool to get Bitcoin payments in some of these VR things. I think that it with Nosta, it could be possible. So you could do some zapping. So you could, I don't know, join a casino or whatever, and you could have your wallet, and then you could send some zaps to play some card games. So, yeah, we gave Nosta.com a lick of paint. That was this week. Fiat Jaff was working on this, and I helped out where I could. It's got a nice onboarding towards the top there. If you go to join Nosta, there's like it generates your Nosta keys, and then you can fill in like your profile details, and then send your first post as well on Nosta, which is pretty sweet. It always like straddles, this thing, like, because when people Google Nosta, they end up on Nosta.com. So like, although like we need to be able to profit products, and we need to be able to offer products and services on it, it is also like an educational page. So we kind of like have to strike this balance. So we're constantly, reaching out to the Nosta community. So that's the story of the week. Is Fiat Jeff working on that, me working on that with him to try and make that look kind of like appealing for developers, but then also appealing, like, easy enough for my father-in-law to use. That's my focus group, is my father-in-law. The other thing is, my friend BC, he sent me, so in the Alan Bits shop, we've got these Nosta signing devices. Honestly, I think this little gizmo is one of the most important things which has ever been built. Um, so you have so when it comes to key management, like Bitcoin is a spin-off project from public key cryptography, and people getting access to public key cryptography, as is Nosta. And humans are really benefit from public key cryptography existing, hence the cypherpunks. The Nosta signing device. So when you talk about key management in Bitcoin, you have your hardware wallet, and you want to do a transaction, you plug it in and you sign the transaction, you broadcast it. But when it comes to me, like, tweeting on my phone on Nosta, like that doesn't really make sense. I'd have to plug in a device and then sign a note and send it. So what this is this has your NSEC on, your private key for your Nosta account, and it's plugged in at home somewhere safe, connected to your Wi-Fi. And then on your phone, you have a delegated key. So I create a post, I publish it. This thing pulls down the post. It says, "Oh, okay, it came from that private key. Right, I'll sign this with your actual key, and I'll republish it back into the Nosta network." And if for whatever reason this gets compromised, then I can go to this thing and just delegate a new key. And I think it's just really interesting having this excuse to do key management, public crypto key management in a context which isn't a Bitcoin payment, because the world will have to get used to public key cryptography when captures get too hard and passwords get too hard. So I really think this is so cutting edge and so cool. It's like the simplest, cheapest little device, and you just plug it in, and it holds your private key. And yeah, so I'm excited to play around with this, and I want to do a video for it. But yeah, Nosta stuff this week. It's good fun.
Well, that sounds fantastic, Ben. And I've got an idea already. They need to be at least 2 packs. If people lose their Twitter account, they need one of those for at home, one to put in the safe, one to put in the underground, whatever. Because, I mean, no one cares about my Twitter account, but if it was like Elon's account or whatever, and it was in Nostr, or let's say Jack's Nostr account, in terms that people can understand,
Well, I mean,
Jack,
like,
back it up a bunch of times.
So like the whole point of all this stuff is it is like, and similar with Bitcoin, you're and actually public key cryptography, like obviously through Bitcoin was able to come along leaps and bounds in usability, and now in Nostr it's able to come in leaps and bounds in usability because this is a tool which humanity drastically needs to say yes, I am me, and this is my digital self on the internet. Is public key cryptography. So and another huge innovation which we have now in Nostr is people working on sharding, which is like you say, Thomas, which is your private key can be held by like a federation of people who need to come together to delegate a new key, and that could be on here, and then that delegates another key which is on here. But it's all about like the value of your digital self on the internet and how you secure that. And just creating the best sort of, but also the most usable security experience that you could possibly have. And it's very exciting to see people. And like, if you just like Bitcoin became this, like all the best work which was happening in geography was being one of the big incentives was Bitcoin is using Bitcoin cryptography in Bitcoin, and it's similar in Nostr now. Is with Schnorr stuff, it's all the libraries, the cryptography libraries, the public key cryptography libraries, which are already being worked on. They're being worked on through through Nostr, and they're being worked on through Bitcoin, and that's great because really public key cryptography is the revolution. Hence why we're the World Crypto Network.
There you go. World Crypto Network. Back to cryptography again. The most useful word ever. A quick check on the chat. People are sharing their stories of the week. Dusty says he's going to take his 7-year-old to the roller skating rink. That sounds like a great time. Way to go, Dusty. Glenn's tired of VR games. He bumps his head into the walls and thumps things. Sounds dangerous. Dusty also mentions that James Wynn, his $billion margin position, is the story of the month. The guy is a millionaire, billionaire, whatever. He's been betting money on Bitcoin. I think at the moment right now, last I saw, he had about 100 million, and I think he lost about 100 million. To him, it's not that much, though. It's pretty strange. Too bad. Chikezi says his dad, he's been telling him about Bitcoin for years. Now he put money into some dodgy scam or an app coin. But many of us, that's how you have to learn about Bitcoin, is you get scammed first, then you redouble your efforts, you learn more, you get into Bitcoin. So that'd be pretty good. And Dusty's excited about Ben's idea, the physical device for digital ID. And that really is the way that we have the digital world. You can save things, and then that way you can be an avatar in the virtual world. And finally today, it's June 6th, 2025. I guess it was around 81 years ago in 1944, as Darren Rovell shares on Twitter. This photo is called Into the Jaws of Death. Taken on this day in 1944, 36 men on the initial storming into the water at Omaha Beach in Normandy. 100-pound backpacks, rough seas, German shooting from bluffs on high. The sacrifice is hard to fathom. For those that battled, thank you. And just another reminder of World War II. You can see there the boat, that thing would go down. I think we're all picturing Saving Private Ryan at this point. I thought about putting it on this morning. And then maybe Call of Duty or one of those games where you play World War II. It's very popular among video gamers now, but imagine going into that yourself and just pushing forward through that. And that's what it took last time. But this time, we can't even be bothered to count the votes. Why even bother? Who cares? Anyway, thanks for joining us. We didn't do too much on the Elon versus Trump thing, but it was a huge story. They are fighting, and they are affecting the price of Bitcoin. Big billionaires punching each other, little people down here on the ground getting hurt. But isn't that always the way? So thanks to everybody for joining us. Be sure to give us a thumbs up down below. Push subscribe if you haven't already. And until next time, bye-bye.